At this time, I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's Marketsharp webinar series, sponsored by Marketsharp, Window and Door Dealers Alliance, and Level 10 Contractor. And since it's the top of the hour, let's go ahead and get started. To kick things off, I'd like to introduce Tim Mush, Director of Business Development. So Tim, go ahead and take it away.
Well, thank you, Michelle, and thanks for joining us on a Sunday, as we approach to get together for things like this time of the year, but you guys are to be commended. And hopefully the reason you came is because of the title of the webinar, which I love, by the way, how to make the jump to $10 million with your home services company. More on that in a little bit, but I just think that's a great topic, and it's right on target with what we're going to discuss. So a lot to cover today, so quick housekeeping things. You can communicate with us through the use of the communication palette. You should have had one pop up on your screen. It looks similar to what I'm pointing to on the slide right now. There's an area called questions, and that's where you can do just that. You can send questions our way, comments our way during the webinar. Do our best to keep up, although we got a very large group here today, and sometimes we can't. We might get you a text message back with an answer, or we might bring up your question on the call so the whole group can benefit. So feel free to use that should you want to send something our way. Today's webinar sponsors, and by the way, these webinars can't happen without these sponsors, so hopefully you'll check them out. Our company here, Marketsharp CRM. We also have a new sponsor here, been a great alliance friend of ours for a number of years, the Window and Door Dealers Alliance. You'll hear more about them in a second. And then also Rich's company, Level 10 Contractors. So that's who's making the webinar available to you. So hang around till the end. I'm going to give away a few things, as Michelle mentioned earlier. First, a one-year subscription to Marketsharp CRM. That's about a $1,380 value. And then Rich just released a new book here a bit ago. And this is great because there aren't books like this just for our industry. And there is now. And this book is called Unlocking Unlimited Lead Flow. And this is not a generic marketing advertising book. This book is dead on for what we do in this business. And tried to put a value on that, and all I could come up with is it could be worth up to a $10 million value to you, because that's essentially what we're talking about here today. So if you don't mind, I want to send you a quick question to get a gauge of who's on the webinar with us, and feel free to do your best here and let us know what your approximate annual revenue is. Quickly go ahead and respond to this, and we'll gather up the information and we'll share the results with the group. And kind of interesting how it's shaping up. So it looks like about half of you submitted your responses so far. So quickly, the rest of you go ahead and click on screen. Okay, I'm going to close the poll in just a few seconds. All right. Thanks so much. Here's what we got. Looks like we got 16% of you under $1 million, but the lion's share of you are between $1 and $3 million. Close second between 3 and 5, and then we go 16% between 5 and 10. And look, 9% of you are over $10 million. And even though the title of the webinar is how to get to $10 million, you guys hang around because, even if you're over $10 million, I think the things we're going to talk about here today will take you to whatever your next level is. But this is about exactly how I thought this was going to turn out. More on that in just a second. Okay. So let's move on. And again, talk about the title, how to make the jump to 10 million. And Rich will elaborate more on this in a second. But what I've seen, traveling around the country and talking to a lot of folks at events and things such as that, I see a lot of companies get to what the poll question revealed today, to that $1, $2, $3, $4 million mark, and just kind of stick there. Can't seem to get over that hump, because it does take something different to move you to that next level and getting to 10 million and beyond. So Rich and I got our heads together and thought, gosh, that is a great concept to try to bring to a group like we're on today and talk about the specific things necessary to make that jump to $10 million. So with that, I want to introduce our speaker today. A great friend of mine. I've known Rich since about 2005, and he'll probably mention a little bit about that in a second. Rich is the founder of Level 10 Contractor. He's also an author, as you know. He's the CEO of the company. He's worked with over 1,000 clients in a lot of different industries, conducted over 10,000 hours of training. but now he's specializing in our space, the remodeling home improvement space. And he's been doing a full range of marketing fulfillment services for our industry, and began doing that specifically since 2012. So with that, Rich, are you with us? Welcome to the call.
Hey Tim, how you doing? Good to be on your call again. It's been a while.
It has.
So want to thank you for letting me come on your webinar today. I've got some information that's I wouldn't say it's new and improved, but I think it's organized a little bit different. That's going to shed some good light on some things for some of these contractors that are really thinking in terms of growth. So you ready for me to take this and run with it? Hello?
Yeah, Rich, I think you got control now. You should be able to move the slide.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see how this works here. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So let me just get my controls all situated here. So like Tim said, I've been doing this for a long time, both in the remodeling industry, home services industry, and outside of it. It started in 1994. Actually, November 9th will be the 25-year anniversary of my company. And I've done a lot of different marketing consulting, marketing, advertising, writing, copywriting for lots of different kinds of companies. But like Tim said, it was 2005. It was through Tim Mush and Marketsharp that I got involved in this industry. He called me up and he said, "Hey, do you want to do a webinar?" In those days, it was called a teleseminar. And I said, "Sure, why not?" And after talking to something like 300 or 400 contractors and having some really good feedback on that quote teleseminar, I asked Tim, "Who's the marketing guru in this industry?" And he said, "We really don't have one. We've got tons of sales trainers and sales gurus, but nobody really in the marketing space." And so we started doing a bunch of seminars together. This was back in 2005, 2006, 2007. I think we did something like 25 or 30 events all over the country. That was just with Marketsharp. Then I got involved with lots of different magazines and publications and conferences. Long story short, since 2005, we've become exclusively positioned in this market space of remodeling contractors, interior, exterior, also home services company. Okay, so a lot of experience here. Our company used to be known as Monopolize Your Marketplace. You may have heard that name. That's the name that we were working with Marketsharp before, all of the webinars and seminars we've done. But we've recently rebranded to Level 10 Contractor. And I want to tell you why. This is not for any kind of reason of, hey, we just need a different vibe or we want a different color or it's time to reboot. It really had to do with a mindset. And I'm going to tell you exactly why. And hopefully what I'm about to say will resonate with you because, Tim, I'll actually be honest with you. The poll results were actually skewed a little heavier towards the larger companies than the typical average crowd. I think it was something like 45% total were over $3 million. We typically get a lot of the smaller ones. And I'm hoping that that's the case because when you saw the title of this webinar, I'm hopeful that some of the companies that were in the a little bit bigger areas, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, and certainly 10 million plus, said, hey, this is something that I'm interested in. I'm going to tell you what happened. It started with a phone call in 2011. I was on spring break with my kids, and I got a phone call from a guy named Mark Aiken, and he said, hey, I want you to come do your 4-day marketing boot camp for my company in Wilmington, Delaware. And I said, who is this again? What are you talking about? I don't do 4-day marketing boot camps on site for companies. I do them in a central location, and companies from all over the country come in and attend them. He said, yeah, I know, but I want you to do it just for me. How much would you charge me to do that? And I'd never been asked such a question. I said, I don't know, probably $40,000 or $50,000. He said, $40,000. Who do I make the check out to? Where do I send it? I want to do this 4-day boot camp. So I found myself about a month later in Wilmington, Delaware, talking to 10 people for 4 days. And this company was called Horizon Services. And I'm going to go ahead and put this next slide on here. Horizon Services was an HVAC company that was up there in Wilmington, Delaware, also serviced the Philadelphia area. They were doing about $44 million in sales. And the reason they paid me all that money to come out there and do that workshop is they wanted to see if the things that they thought that they knew about me and my company were actually true, because they were interested in going to another level with their marketing. Okay. Now, this is a $44 million company, not small by any stretch of the imagination. One of the top 10 at the time companies, and grew, as I'll tell you here in a minute, to one of the largest companies in the industry. But this company was doing $44 million, and they had plateaued out in their marketing. And their question was, how do we get to the next level? Well, the way we got to the next level is everything that we're about to talk about on this webinar. Here's what I found. A company that has $44 million with a guy like Mark Aiken running it was doing things significantly different than most of the companies I was used to working with, which were smaller companies in the remodeling industry, companies that were in the $1 to $2 to $3 million range. I found out that it wasn't just that they were spending more money, because they were. I found out that they had a completely different mindset and way of thinking. And as I started working with this company, we had success. In about 6 years, from 2011 to 2017, the company grew from $44 million in sales to $150 million in sales, and they were actually bought out by a private equity firm for 9 figures in 2017. Well, in 2015, midway through that process, I got a call from a company called Jericho. This is a kitchen and bath remodeling company in Kansas City. And John Bartram, the owner, said, hey, we're doing just fine, but we need to get a leg up in our marketing. We feel like we've got a great story to tell, and we feel like all we're doing is competing on price. Can you help me out? Well, started working with that company in 2015. And guess what I found out? This company at the time was doing about $12 million in sales, and I found out that they were doing things significantly different than most of my clients up until that point, except for Horizon Services. I saw that they were doing a lot of things very, very similar to Horizon Services. Then I got a call from a company called Service Champions out in Orange County, California. This is a company that was doing at the time about $30 million in sales. And they said, hey, we saw what you're doing for Horizon Services. Can you do that for us? And so I started working with them. And I found that this company also had a massively different way of thinking and doing things than the companies that I had been used to working with. I also started working with a company called 1-800-Hansons and a company called You Build It, national franchise company. And all of these companies had one thing in common, which is they did everything different. And you say, well, how could it be that they did everything different? Well, it all has to do with the way that they thought and the way that they did their marketing. So I took all of that experience. Jericho, I still work with. Horizon Services, after they sold to private equity, I stopped working with them because the new owners had, let's say, differences in opinion on what needed to be done. Service Champions, bought by private equity for 9 figures just earlier this year. And I'm still working with them. It's a great company. Also work with their sister company in Northern California. 1-800-Hansons, bought by private equity in 2017 for, I think, 9 figures. It might have been high 8 figures. Who knows? You Build It, national franchise, still work with them. But here's what I did. I wrote a book last year called Unlocking Unlimited Lead Flow. And I can't get this thing to go the way I want it. There we go. There we don't go. Sorry, Tim. It's a little sensitive here on the controls. Unlocking Unlimited Lead Flow. This book is a culmination of everything that I learned working with these kinds of companies from 2011 till last year when I wrote the book, 2018. It actually was published in January of this year. And you can see on there a blueprint for remodeling and home services contractors to make the jump to $10 million. Now, if you are doing $10 million or more, this book is still for you. If you're doing less than $10 million, definitely this book is for you. Okay? So our mission statement as a company, Level 10 Contractor, is to help remodeling and home service companies make the jump to 10 million plus by generating unlimited lead flow. And what we're going to talk about on this webinar is, well, how do you do that? How do you do that? One comment before we get going on that is a concern that people have when I'm talking to them about this is, well, if I'm not already a big company, is this something that'll work for me? Well, here's the common denominators of these companies. They have the best products and services.